A criminal who had once been one of Canada and Interpol's most wanted criminals managed to get away with practically everything. When he committed what he thought was the perfect murder, however, he forgot about one witness, his victim's fancy watch. This case would eventually go down in history as the Rolex Murder for the single clue that identified the victim, leading officers through an international web of lies and deceit. Welcome to Bizarre Cases. I'm Joel, and today we'll be going back to 1996 and exploring a case involving a murderer who was finally nabbed thanks to a Rolex watch. Without further ado, let's walk onto the edge of the unknown. This story revolves around Albert Johnson Walker. Albert was born in Paris, Ontario in 1946. After dropping out of high school, Albert began working at the library at the University of Waterloo. There, in 1968, he first met Barbara MacDonald. The two got married on October 25, 1968. 4 children were born to the couple, and in 1975, Barbara gave birth to Sheena Walker, their youngest daughter. Walker went on to start his own bookkeeping business, Walker Financial Services Incorporated, after working there for 2 years. In just 10 years, Walker Financial grew into a 6-branch company. However, as Albert enjoyed his now lavish lifestyle, his relationship with Barbara began deteriorating. In 1986, Albert suffered yet another significant failure when the stock venture he invested in failed. Albert, who had little money now, defrauded $3.2 million and more than 70 Canadian clients. On August 9, 1990, after Barbara decided to break things off with Albert, the two parted ways. Barbara, however, didn't have custody of her 15-year-old daughter Sheena, who chose to live with her father. It was becoming harder for Albert to stay in Canada as the police were now looking into the suspected theft of $3.2 million from his company. He and Sheena fled to England in December 1990 out of concern about capture and started over there. After the move, Albert and his daughter made their home in Harrogate, North Yorkshire. Albert took the name David Davies, and he had Sheena pretend as his young wife. Elaine Boyes, a 39-year-old receptionist at a fine art auction in Harrogate, was the next person he met. She told him about her boyfriend, Ronald Pat, who was a TV repairman. Seeing it as an opportunity for himself, he befriended Ronald and co-founded the Cavendish Corporation. Albert now exploited Ronald to launder money so he could stay in England longer. Yet Ronald yearned to move back to Canada permanently with Elaine since he sorely missed his native country. Albert paid for the couple's vacation to Canada, but those innocent people had no idea of the secret agenda. Albert requested Ronald's driver's license, birth certificate, and signature stamp before he left in 1992. Albert stated that he required these for the company. With Robert gone and all the relevant documents in hand, Albert now assumed Robert's identity. But in 1995, when a dissatisfied and unemployed Ronald returned to England, he threatened Albert's freedom. Albert now took his time to design a precise plan, since he knew he needed to make Ronald disappear so he could live comfortably. So, on 20th July 1996, Albert went out with Ronald on a fishing trip on his boat, the Lady Jane. Ronald was relaxing when Albert smacked him hard on the back of the head with his trouser belt. Ronald fell on the boat unconscious and he laid there with his head bleeding. Albert tucked the boat anchor into his trouser belt and threw Ronald's body into the sea. Albert returned home and resumed his daily chores without feeling guilty or remorse. This heinous murder, however, caught up with him 8 days later. On July 28, 1996, a fisherman named John Kopic discovered a dead body 6 miles from Teignmouth. He reported what he had revealed to the authorities, scared by what he had learned. When the police arrived, they investigated the fully clothed dead person that had no identification. He seems to have been involved in an unfortunate accident. Accidents do occur on the many boats and ferries that cross the English Channel. However, nothing was reported, and authorities were forced to investigate the issue as soon as possible. When the body arrived at the medical examiner's office, it was determined that he was between the ages of 40 and 50. He had been in the sea for almost a week before he was discovered. Subsequent investigation revealed that he had sustained a serious but not fatal brain injury. Drowning was determined to be the official cause of death. The man, on the other hand, was wearing a Rolex watch on his right wrist. The watch was a Rolex Oyster Perpetual in gold. Each Rolex has a concealed serial number inscribed on the watch where the wristband meets the watch face. Officers were able to confirm that the watch had been serviced twice in the 1980s by a dealership in Yorkshire. The last service was 10 years ago, in 1986. The jewelers told authorities that the watch belonged to Ronald Joseph Platt. It took authorities nearly a month after Ronald's body was discovered to locate his last known residence location. They got in touch with the landlord in Chelmsford, Essex. The leasing agent stated that Ronald no longer lived at the address but could provide police with the name of one of his acquaintances. Ronald Platt listed David Davis as a personal referee on the leasing application. Davis's phone number was on the app and the cops contacted him right away. Davis remained silent after learning of his friend's death and did not ask many inquiries. Davis told cops he hadn't seen Ronald in 3 months. The detectives called him again a few days later to clarify some information. When they couldn't reach him, an officer named Frank Redman went to his house to acquire his written statement. The street in the rural area contained only 4 houses, none of which were named. The officer's first call was to an elderly neighbor. His response, on the other hand, shook the officer to his core. The officer was told by a neighbor, "Our neighbor is called Platt, not Davies." D.S. Redman was taken aback when he discovered that the man police thought was deceased was alive and well in Woodham Walter, Essex. Perhaps there was something more nefarious going on. After investigating this perplexing case, authorities discovered that for the previous 3 years, all of Davis's invoices had been paid with Platt checks and credit cards. Platt signed some after his body was discovered. He couldn't possibly have signed checks from the bottom of the ocean. Elaine and Ronald had been separated for more than 3 years at this point. They were no longer in contact, but Elaine still cared about Ronald. After all, they'd been together for 13 years. As a result, when police called Elaine near the end of 1996 to inform her that Ronald had died, she was understandably surprised. After speaking with the police, she realized Davis had contacted her 3 weeks before and knew Ronald had died but had not told her. Why didn't he say anything? This piqued the interest of the cops as well. Davis had clearly assumed Ronald's identity and he had not informed Elaine that Ronald had died. Albert, aka David, possessed a sailboat that was docked in South Devon, which everyone knew. Albert's phone records also revealed that calls were made from the same region where Ronald was discovered during the same time period in July when the medical examiner estimated the drowning occurred. Although Albert said he hadn't seen his friend in months, witnesses had spotted them together a month before Ronald's death in the seaside Devon town of Tot. Police had enough evidence at this moment to arrest David. Albert was arrested after police arrived at his home on Little London Lane. Nevertheless, as they were preparing for the arrest, a taxi arrived. Albert dashed for it and climbed into the passenger seat. The taxi rushed away. The police, on the other hand, were swift to apprehend it. They also brought Sheena since they had discovered her hiding gold bars in a diaper bag. As the police investigated Albert's past, they discovered fake identities and money laundering accusations against him in Canada. Ronald's fingerprint on the plastic bag discovered on the boat and Sheena's testimony were the final pieces of incriminating evidence. She said that Albert had hypnotized her and labeled him an evil con artist. As a result, Albert was arrested on October 31st, 1997 for Ronald's murder. Albert agreed to money laundering but refused to plead guilty to murder at his trial in June 1998 at Exeter Crown Court. Yet the jury convicted him guilty of Ronald's murder. Sheena was permitted to return to Canada once the trial concluded. Albert was moved to Canada on February 22, 2005 after serving 7 years at Essex Jail. He faced additional counts of fraud, theft and money laundering and was sentenced 5 years prison sentence in Kingston, Ontario. Meanwhile, Elaine Boyes was happy that her good-natured ex-partner had gotten the justice he deserved. Albert's attempt for freedom was recently rejected by the Parole Board of Canada, which denied him both day and full parole, as well as his request for an unescorted leave to go to Vancouver Island for a personal development program. What do you think about this video? Do you believe the police did a good job at solving this case and getting Albert punished? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked our efforts in the research of this video, please make sure to like, share and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss out on our content. Catch you in the next video.